Bing, thanks so much for joining. I want to start with the A100 list, also, what you're doing variety, but just how you're, doing things to elevate.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks again for having me, Jeff. As you know, Goldhouse is a multitudinous cultural ecosystem devoted to uniting, investing in, and championing the Asian Pacific diaspora to power tomorrow for all. As we say, empower us to empower everyone else. One of our four levers is focused on recognition, though, because we know that mainstream awareness and embrace is a critical step to longer term belonging in society. So the A100 list is the cornerstone of that recognition slate of efforts. It is the definitive and most mainstream Asian award on the continent. It is the definitive because of everyone who votes. So it's all the heads of the top Asian
Mhm.
Pacific nonprofits, as well as over 1,500 CEOs, community activists, A-list celebrities, Olympic gold medalists. It's mainstream because it gets everywhere from Google.com, the most
Yeah.
valuable real estate in the world. Thank you to Google and thank you to our alma mater there, all the way to incredible press partners and outlets like Variety, Billboard, and so forth, just to make sure the mainstream is aware of not just our community's indelible achievements, but also to position us as incredible role models for this next generation.
No, and it's wonderful. Like when you first started that, because the place you're at is amazing, but when you're first starting that, what are the steps? Because I think for the audience, like, that's awesome. It takes a few steps to get there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it was part of a broader plan of how do we actually change not only the face but sustain opportunity of the world's largest majority, which is
Hmm.
the Asian Pacific diaspora. We're 62% of the world, fastest growing minority domestically, a disproportionate percentage of multinational growth, but also have our own versions of disenfranchisement. We had basically negligible and really pernicious portrayals in media.
Yeah.
We continue to be the least likely demographic to be promoted to management. Economically, we also have the widest income disparity. And so, how do we solve all these things? One of the four sort of strategies was, again, sort of this recognition of this mainstream belonging. And so, this really came from a place of need of we don't like how we're portrayed in media. We know people can't just follow every single film, every single book, every single speech that everyone is, producing out there. We need to actually distill it all for them once a year, ritualistically, in the same way that the Oscars reset film or the Grammys reset music or New Year's resets the Gregorian calendar. We wanted to reset the face of our community, and so that's sort of the need of where it came from. The second step is we're not here to be the best Asian award; we're here to be the best award, period. And so when you have that sort of
Yeah.
mindset, you naturally will gravitate. Well, what are the best awards in the world? The Pulitzer, the Nobel Prize, the Time 100, the Forbes sort of Midas list, so forth and so on. And so we studied all of these different awards. And of course, because humans are concentric, they're all structured pretty identically. They have a single voting body. They sort of time wise function as a climactic, but also reset button for that community. There's a certain amount of assets or concoction that go into it, so forth and so on. And so that was basically our sort of playbook. We sort of, as all good artists do, adapted. The first essential step was using this as a rallying cry or a unifying vehicle. And so that's where we brought together at the time 20 of the top, it's now well over 50 of the top Asian as well as multicultural organizations to validate inside the community who we were all just really proud of and who we wanted to project into the mainstream. Fast forward, I think the only other change that we've made over the past few years is it's one thing for Asians to pat ourselves on the back, it's another for everyone to.
Yeah.
But we know that both are important. Neither is more important than the other. They're tantamount. And so we also welcome a litany of major multicultural sort of voters, whether it's the heads of the TV and Film Academy or otherwise.
And then connected with the A100, then you have the partnership with the Variety. Talk to me a little bit about that and how you kind of spanning out.
Yeah, Variety has just been one of the most incredible partners of ours since inception, particularly Jazz 10K over there, who's the senior artisans editor. We know that we have this theory of change called take the house and make the house. So the idea is that some people think that you can only change systems from the inside. Some people think you can only change systems from the outside and say,
Hmm.
screw the system. The reality is, as a proper adult, is you need everybody. Everyone's got a role to play. Everyone's got an
Yep.
essential role to play. And so Variety is the most read entertainment outlet, as you know. And so this is an existing house that we want to not necessarily take for our own, but help sort of reshape to ensure that they're projecting the right portrayals of our community, the right news, the right incredible impact we've had. And so Jazz actually came to us about a year ago and had this sort of incredible idea to have a holistic experience to ensure that within the media industries, people were not just seeing Asians for representation's sake, but Asians for our incredible ingenuity. People forget in three superlatives, we are in many ways among the most creative people in the world. Our film, Everything Everywhere All at Once by the Daniels and Jonathan
Awesome.
Wong, a very Asian, yeah, in my opinion, the best film of all time. And according to awards, also the most awarded film of all time. So it is the best film of all time. That is a very Asian film, Asian created, Asian led. The most watched series on the one of the biggest video platforms in the world, Netflix, is of course Squid Game,
Yep.
entirely in Korean. And then finally, the most lucrative creative franchise in history. So the biggest seller is Pokemon, which is Japanese. And so we're not just proud of representation or sort of a changing face or dismantling stereotypes. All of that is so important and fine and well. But we're just excited because we're really creative and we create industries from that creativity. And so I know that Jazz and Variety were particularly jazzed about that, pun intended. And so we engineered basically a holistic relationship across multitudes. So one is we celebrate all of the Asian as well as multicultural nominees for all the major awards together every year through something called the One House Toast. One House is our moniker or our umbrella for our cross-cultural solidarity efforts. Second is we're about to announce the Up Next 8 API. They're basically the 8 individuals who we think reflect the next great breakout stars, whether it's front of camera, behind the camera, and executive ranks and publicity, so forth and so on. I think as history tells us, lightning often happens in a bottle, even if it took a decade to make. And so we know so many of these people have already popped off and will likely pop off even faster than their forebears. So it's a really holistic relationship. I also have to hat tip the broader Penske media family. We love THR, we love Deadline, we love Billboard. All of their senior editors and CEOs are members of Gold House as well. And so once again, everyone's got sort of a cool place to part to play there.
Well, it's awesome too because there's mutual benefit, right, in expanding outward, right? That you have your list, but you are also doing other things with other partners, right? They get a benefit out of that. You get a benefit out of that. It grows, right? That's how you grow things. I do like the point of like you can't just do something from the inside, do something from the outside. You just have to throw everything at something, you know,
Yeah,
everywhere all at
yeah,
once.
absolutely.
But
Exactly.
I had to jump in on the pun train. But where do you, having done this for a while and just being tapped into the media industry, where do you think? I don't want to say from a scale of 1 to 10, but just where are we at currently as far as being able to properly recognize and create those opportunities, and where's the next best spot to go?
Oh, great question. So we've made incredible strides. I mean, all the great successes I just mentioned. In the last 2 decades, the Asian diaspora very proudly is the only multicultural community to make any meaningful improvement in on-screen representation. It's more than sextupled. So we're really proud of that. The problem is there are still issues that persist. And so one is that we actually commissioned and co-produced a landmark study with the USC Norman Lear Center last year that indicated that most of Asian representation on screen is actually white adjacent. It's a secondary character to a white
Mhm.
protagonist. Majority of relationships are with a white counterpart. And all that's fine, by the way. Like we should all be friends with everyone. The problem is we can't only exist or principally exist through the old dominant majority because it effectively disenfranchises other minority groups. It also unintentionally puts a wedge between us and others, perpetuating stereotypes like the model minority myth, so forth
Yeah.
and so on. And so the punchline there is we need more specific, multiculturally led stories that are being told, particularly for our diaspora. diaspora. And this is particularly true when you go into certain faiths, like the Muslim faith.
Hmm.
Islamophobia continues to persist in this industry, which is unacceptable. Different forms of xenophobia that try to sort of perpetuate our foreigner status or our immigrant status when the majority of us are immigrants and continue to be, or in certain forms of misogyny where Asian women continue to be really grossly overly sexualized, which is just not okay. So that's one. The second broader issue that we're tackling aggressively is ownership and green light power. There
Yes.
are some really, incredible multicultural green lighters at the creative level. You've got Bella Bajaria, Ginny Howe, and Dan Lin over at Netflix. You got Asad Ayaz over at Disney. You've got the great Agnes Chu, everyone's favorite studio chief. There's just, and you got, Abhijay Prakash at Blumhouse. There's so many incredible creative green lighters, as well as I should have mentioned Uncle Albert Cheng at Amazon Prime, of course. So there are incredible greenlighters who are of Asian descent that have felt a responsibility to make sure that they have a multicultural remit, not just for representation, but because it's great business, because they know the way the world works. But we need more of that. And so going back to the take the house versus make the house, we need to make sure that we're educating both golds and non-golds alike, of why at a commercial level as well as cultural level, it's so important to invest in new stories and to greenlight them. The second thing I think about is within our own remit, how can we make our own houses? So Gold House announced a year ago something called the Creative Equity Fund. It's our content fund. We're focused not just on independent film. So we had the privilege of investing in Didi by Sean Wong that won the top prize at Sundance this past season, which we're very proud of, but also of potentially more importance, the new form of media companies. So we just invested in this anime roll-up called Kasagi Labo that we're really excited about. Anime is one of the category genres, as well as sort of cultural identities for some folks that just traverses the world, regardless of who you are, how old you are, what you look like, what language you speak, and so forth. So we're excited to make sure that we empower the next generation of not just greenlighters in existing companies, but next generation of greenlighters who are greenlighting their own companies. And so that's the other big step that we need to take. The final one is we call it bridges internally. So the best franchises are truly franchises. They're toys, they're
Hmm.
site-based entertainment, they're all things that you and I love, Jeff, right? And so how do we make sure that we can make those extended commercial opportunities available to particularly independent media owners or independent storytellers who may not have a $450 million budget like Disney does for a Marvel film? The other bridge that we think about outside of cross-industry bridges is, of course, cross-cultural bridges. I do think it's a minority's responsibility to give a damn about other minorities because one of our
Yes.
successes directly gives permission to others. Now, is that a lot of work? Is it a lot of pressure? Yes, 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 yes. But welcome to life. We have to often solve problems we did not create ourselves. And so I take a particular responsibility, even though anything we do will never be sufficient nor enough, right? But I feel a particular passion to ensure that we're trying to actively elevate and sincerely and sustainably invest in the other minority communities as often as we can.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting conversations I've had with multiple people on this podcast about race and culture is that it shouldn't be incumbent on you to explain but it's also the very definition of privilege is if you have privilege then you don't feel that responsibility to do that. And
Yes.
that's the thing about it. It's like that's the privilege isn't really seen. It's just, oh, if you don't have added layers of things that you have to think about or do or apply, then that is inherently privilege. So,
Yes.
you know, one of the things with the takeaways of what you were talking about, and that was unbelievable and concise. And sometimes I'm just like, cool. When you are on a heater, I'm just going to hang back for 6 minutes and let it
No.
ride. No, I do. I really. I mean, like that is the best kind of podcast, right? I should be talking less. But one of the things I was pulling from that too is yes, in making the house, like there was a couple things. One was like it's a competitive industry, so you see why people will take any role. But the long term thought is that design the right roles. But yes, that really does come from who the decision makers are, right? To change that philosophy, to get rid of the model minority thing. So it's one of the interesting things that I've seen is in the entertainment industry, there are sometimes that people are like, oh, well, it's economy of scale. It's hard to build something. But when you look at Blumhouse and A24 and others, it's not that hard. There exists an interesting middle space in budget and other places where you really can, create a house and build something. Do you feel like there are still opportunities to kind of, build the house?
Oh gosh. I hate to be the contrarian on this.
No, I
It's
love
so
it.
hard to build
Oh,
things.
no, 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 absolutely, absolutely. Bing, let me give you a comparison, right? And
Yeah.
when somebody tells me, hey, I want to build another social media app, I'm like, don't do that.
Mm, mm,
Don't do that.
mm,
Even
mm,
Google
mm,
failed at that, right? So, like, it
mm.
is very hard
Yeah,
from
right.
an economy of scale there, where I'm like, I probably would have told you like 10 years ago, I'm like, I don't really see, another studio or another thing popping up because things are so massive. But
Yeah.
but there have been certain genres of film, whether it's the rom-com or, the $30 million budget film or the $20 million budget film that, has existed a gap where, A24 has filled that and now they're trying to expand, but there have been other places that have kind of filled that gap, and so there's always an angle. But yes, please tell me why it's so damn hard, Bing.
So let me well, it's not my initial complaint. So I'll say it's hard and leave it at that. But I think maybe the more intelligent way to answer this, which is I think what you're astutely getting to, is can be learned from sort of recent history.
Hmm.
So during and after the last Great Recession between 2008 2010, depending on how you slice it, obviously there are reverberations after that, but there are basically two things that happened because budgets were so constrained. One is a lot of the big media companies reverted back to proven bankable franchises. This by no coincidence coincided with the rise of Marvel after its debut of Iron Man 2008 or so.
Ta-da.
And that makes sense, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, like, and I'm the biggest MCU fanboy. I'm excited for the X-Men's, sort of arrival and Doctor Doom and so forth. It makes sense because they want to go to back to proven IP where there's an engaged audience. That is about to happen again. Everyone wants their sequel. Everyone already had their Lord of the Rings moment now, the Rings of Power in the case of Amazon, etc. So you're about to see a reversion back to even more bankable franchises. What I'm excited by and what last year really represented is what are the other places where there's proven IP that may have never been on screen yet?
Yes.
The best examples, of course, are Super Mario and Barbie. The
Yep.
very excellent, I should say, Super Mario and Barbie. We know that Hasbro has, what is it, 3 dozen different films that are being made. Honestly, all of
Hmm.
which that have been announced sound very compelling to me, even though I was honestly a contrarian on that in the beginning. But I'm really excited about the new franchises. The other thing that happened, which you're alluding to, is basically all the middle budget films died. Rom coms died.
Hmm.
And it's because they just didn't make financial sense. The exception to this, of course, which James Wan, who's also gold, has gets a lot of credit for this, is the horror category.
Yes.
Horror is the sole category that was remained abundant in that mid tier of,
Hmm.
let's say, $20 million to like 75 slash 100. So that persisted. But the more important trend on the other side, outside of franchises, beyond the death of the middle tier, was the rise of independent film. Because effectively, we forget that this is a creative industry. It's not just show business; it's still a show, and so you can't just have big bankable multi-billion-dollar franchises. You also have to win Oscars,
Hmm.
in the case of screen and or Emmys. And so you saw this rise of really diverse, incredible, independent storytelling. These are the Fruitvale Stations of the world, of
Hmm.
course, Songs of My Brothers, so forth and so on. And so what happens today? We are in a contractive phase right now of media yet again, and it's partly because of the overabundance or overcreation of content.
Yeah.
It's partly because of these light recession we're in. It's partly because of the pressures of two, one could argue, three soft wars, or two hard wars, one soft war, I should say, so forth and so on. And so right now it's almost the hardest but best time to build something new, because what happens is all the big incumbents revert back to what they know and trust, because everyone needs to save their jobs, asterisk, lots of layoffs as well, and they have blind spots and or can't super serve niches because it doesn't make financial sense. This, by the way, in tech is also the rise of the Snaps, the Pinterests, it's the Instagrams of the world in the last sort of recessive cycle. So this is a long way of saying, if you're a founder, if you're a creative, this is absolutely the hardest time to build something because all sorts of resources from canonical institutions are constrained. But it is also the best time
Mhm.
because they don't have the ability to super serve our communities, whether they're ethnically based or industry based and otherwise. So if you can build something now and withstand the next 3 years, imagine what will happen when we revert back to an abundant sort of life cycle, or part of the life cycle. The other thought, or the final thought I have is, unfortunately, distribution, regardless of who you are, is foundationally broken. The waterfall in media makes absolutely no sense to anyone who knows how to do math. And so I am hopeful that one of these companies, we are going to be complicit in this, of course, and are working on a few things. But my hope is that we collectively figure out how to improve distribution, specifically by front loading sales.
Mhm.
It makes no sense to me that an independent film debuts at the great halls of Sundance, waits 6 to 9 months if they're lucky, if they got
Yep.
acquired, and then release again and then sell tickets later. That makes no sense to me at all. Especially when we have drop culture, especially when we have subscription culture, especially when we have people who want a relationship and not a once and done cold marketing, flash in the pan experience. So anyway, that is my TED talk. Thank you for coming. So,
No, I love it. Well,
but
you're right.
right
We don't like to wait for anything, right? The idea that we
now.
would we would protract that and delay that longer. The other thing I was going to add on that is, I'm starting to think about, yes, there's always a counter, right? So the user acquisition era of social media and content goes away. We condense the amount of content that's being created, and you're talking about that. That creates a vacuum, right? That there are certain things that can be done. The other thing is that monoculture very rarely exists now with content, right? It's so funny when I look at like
Yeah.
ratings records from like the 70s and 80s versus now. Like, it was not unheard of on TV to have something that just constantly got 40 million viewers, and now you're like, ooh, if we got 2 million, that's great, because I mean there's just so many different things, so many different avenues. What that does do is it does create opportunities to create things that are more specific, more for specific audiences, for specific culture. There's a lot of different things that can be done. Do you feel like there's, because you don't have to create for monoculture, does that make things easier?
Yes and no. It makes it easier because you can be pure, more authentic, use
Yeah.
the resources you have. It makes it harder because I'll go this far. There's no such thing as mass culture or mainstream culture anymore.
Yeah.
It does not exist. And this is mostly because of distribution paths, because you can get access to so many different things from so many different places. Said another way, the biggest celebrity in the world today may or may not be as big as the biggest celebrity in 1980s, just because there's
Hmm.
so many more places to access. Whereas back then, there are only so many outlets. If you're on the radio, you had made it.
Hmm.
Right now, there's so many different streaming platforms for musicians, right? That would be my TLDR. I also do think about these sort of cycles happening. I'm going to try very hard to use precise language so I don't get totally canceled by half of the world when I say this. But there has been a lot of really beautiful, protracted, deserved attention to minority communities that have been disenfranchised so long, partly instigated, heavily instigated by the summer of Black Lives Matter,
Yep.
Stop Asian Hate, and so forth. The challenge is, uh, there are certain countries, particularly in the United States, where minorities are still collectively a minority. And so those who may not identify with a multicultural community or sensibility have similarly felt disenfranchised because another has risen. Now, I don't believe that the world is zero sum, but unfortunately,
Correct.
in some
Thank you.
cases, it kind of is. Yeah. And so I think my long note on this is we're about to see a rise of a community that is sort of the old dominant majority, that just has felt like they've like kind of given the minorities enough. And part of me, I'm very honestly conflicted in this. Part of me says that everyone should have a place in the sun. I just know practically it may not be able to happen all at once. Part of me also knows that there's just so much work for minority communities. Like you look at what's happened to the indigenous community still, we have so much work we need to do, not even to pay penance for that, but because they deserve it. There's such great richness there. And so it's tough. Like I guess I'm now babbling, but I guess I'll
No, this
leave us
makes
with,
sense.
yeah, these cycles are real. They
Hmm.
do go in cycles. And we need
Yes.
to find, I suppose this is my message, we need to find a place to broaden the sun. We need to find a way to raise oceans as opposed to individual people's backyard pools. um, and that's hard work. Um, the way that we're doing at Gold House is I'm literally looking across the ocean and seeing how we can raise two continents. But even that's not going to be enough because it's only two of the continents. And
Hmm.
so, you know, it's tough. It's tough.
Well,
But what do you think, Jeff?
well, when you were talking about, okay, so obviously when you're talking about, and you had this earlier, well, one thing I was thinking about too was there's the subset of American comedy now that intentionally or unintentionally is appealing to that other group that may feel threatened or may feel like things are zero sum, right? Or that exists to that thinks that cancel culture exists fully, right? So you've seen, as much as it's been tougher
Yep.
for some comedians to navigate, you've seen, and I'm not going to name names, but there's a whole subset of comedians who have definitely done really well in the last 2 years who have appealed to that group that may feel like they're threatened by change and others.
Yep.
I absolutely
Yep.
do not think that progress is zero sum. You are absolutely right that there's a cycle, and you alluded to this earlier, and this is the point I want to make, that you have to make not just the personal, moral, right case, but you also have to make, unfortunately, the financial case, right? And all these different things, so that these things don't become cycles. That yes, your goodwill and your attention to a group needs to sustain, because not just because you want to say or do the right thing, but because this is important and this is viable and this is bankable. And my God, I mean, when you allude to Squid Game, the fact that people were willing to watch something in subtitles to that great
Yep.
effect clearly shows that, I mean, again, people don't like to read and people don't have good attention spans. So that content is great when people get there.
Yep.
That to me tells me enough, right? But yes, I live this in PR all the time, where you know the efforts are made probably with the right intent behind them,
Yep.
but they get forgotten about, right? And they get forgotten about, to kind of close the loop on what you were talking about in financial sense. When we head towards uncertainty or recession, then what is the first thing that tends to drop off? Those things
Yeah,
that we're
exactly.
just doing out of goodwill. I did air
Exactly.
quotes for people who
Exactly.
are just listening, but that's the problem, right? It's the sustainability of movements has to get through both content cycles and economic cycles. That's the harder part.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head of like when we feel oppressed or suffocated in any way, the natural human response is to be defensive and want to survive.
Yeah.
And so that's that. Like when we feel hurt from other people, it will typically come from a place of hurt. And so our responsibility is to figure out, well, why. And so I really I try my best to is and I would say I do this 99% of the time. I'm definitely not perfect. I have moments of weakness or humanity, but I try to remind myself that we all come from invariably three different places. We all want the same three things. They just pronounce themselves in different ways at different
Mm.
times, whether it's in our own life or for others. They are, we want to live as long and healthily as possible, health. They
Yep.
are, I want to have an impactful career or impact on the world, impact. Three, I want to have great familiar relationships, a spouse, best friends, family, parents, etc. We all just want those three things. Health, how long will you be here? What will you do? And who will you do it with? That's all we care about. They just, again, come out in different ways because we're just very different people. I think the second thing that you alluded to of like, how do we sustain these movements? We all know that DEI has kind of DIE'd over the past few years. It was said like 70% less on like S&P 500 calls, like what is it, like a year ago or whatever it was. But the punchline is we all know the budgets have kind of like dissipated and the efforts have kind of dissipated. And so luckily this has not impacted Gold House,
Yeah.
even though we are a nonprofit and on paper we look very DEI. And the reason why is because of something we call the 4 C's internally. And these are annoyingly alliterative, but I'll invoke them since this is like a marketing-ish podcast and you're a
We're
publicity
here
guy by
for it.
trade. But yeah, first is commercial viability. Like we can lament all day long that money is annoying and impure and so forth, but guess what? Money makes the world go round and is the only universal language we all know. So until we can show that something is commercially viable and sustainable, it won't last. So, and that's just an adult truth. The second is critical acclaim. It needs to be hot. It needs to be
Yep.
great. We can't just make money. It needs to be good to last, right? We know that the best franchises make the most money. and by quality. We know that, so forth and so on. So that's number two. Third is cultural imperative. Are we actively using this great commercial and critical acclaim to push the culture forward, whether that's codified by dismantling pernicious stereotypes or projecting a new and affirming set of portrayals for a community that has been misseen? And then the final one that I think we're also hopefully still in is good character. If you harass other human beings, you shouldn't be allowed to progress. If
Mhm.
you are, if your gains are actively trying to dislocate someone else to an existential level, you're wrong. That is not allowed anymore. There's enough space for good work and good people always. And so we try to use these four, but I want to underscore that the first one is about commerciality. And we have to be honest with ourselves that it has to start there, even if it doesn't always end there.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, that is the honest feeling. And as somebody who lives in and grew up in the Rust Belt, when you mentioned zero sum, like, yeah, I know people who feel that way. I absolutely get it. I don't. I think anybody who's traveled outside of their general geographic area realizes we're all generally the same, and it's frustrating. And
Yeah.
it's frustrating on my end, and I can't even imagine it's how much more frustrating it is on other people's ends. But
Yeah. I
that,
should,
yeah, go ahead.
oh no, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Jinx.
Ha!
No, I like that really resonates with me. So I grew up in Tennessee, so like somewhat
Yeah,
similar
yeah,
background, and
Knoxville. Yeah,
like, I, yeah, I never felt racism until I moved to Southern California, where everyone's diverse. By the way, like
interesting.
everyone in Tennessee was my friend. It was all white. I loved it. It was great, and like you can say I was in a sunken place, whatever. We never felt overt racism. My parents didn't even either.
Yeah,
So like just to underscore that, like good people are everywhere. I think to modify my comment about zero sumness, because you mentioned some of the Rust Belt and some workers there. Um, Technology is a fundamentally different story when it comes to this conversation.
hmm,
Technology too often dislocates and does not upskill the people that it is dislocated, and AI is particularly going to be responsible for this. And so I think on this one, like unfortunately, progress is being treated and moved like it is zero sum, even though it should not be. And so I do want us, and I don't know sort of a succinct way to sort of justify this, but I do want us to be mindful and actively figure out how are we upskilling those that we are displacing with these new technologies while or before we are doing it, and not waiting till it's too late.
yeah.
Um, anyway, that's a
No,
problem, not a solution.
no, absolutely. Because if you look at certain technologies, right, the only constant is change. A lot of people can't accept that and would like to blame something else other than the obvious, right? But whether it's farming, whether it's automotive, manufacturing, a lot of things over, you can look back to 1983 in farming and subsequently with NAFTA and everything else. Not that I want to give everybody a huge history lesson, but these are all the things that have happened here. But with AI, that's the one where that might affect a completely different part of the country. It might affect a completely different kind of worker, depending on. And I think every different kind of change tends to create a different kind of disaffected group of people who will then inevitably. What I've noticed is the the pendulum of history is that they'll never blame the thing that happens. They'll blame someone, not the thing. They'll blame someone,
Yes.
and that's
Uh,
pernicious. Like that still 20, 20, 30, 40 years later persists in belief,
yeah.
right? And then that affects consumption of content. That affects culture. That affects politics. That affects everything. So
Yeah.
it's trying to break through the noise of that and get into a deeper discussion about no, this is what's happening, this is the why. And yeah, it would be great if there are programs to upskill and get people to a better space. But anyway, that's my short TED talk on why there are racist people in the Rust Belt. Not giving them a justification,
That's
by
so
the way.
No, I mean honestly, it makes sense, and I think understanding and knowing is half the battle, and then the other
Yes.
half will be doing. I can't believe I just quoted GI Joe, but yeah,
It was on.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's on brand because that's IP right there. Look at that.
Yeah. honestly. Also, their crossover with Transformers is long delayed and very welcome. I'm so excited for it.
I
It's going to be so sick.
I'm so interested in, like you mentioned, Hasbro and Mattel and other places. Like IP can be found anywhere, and I'm with
Yeah.
the belief that whether it's a cereal box character or anything that people have encountered for a very long time, they'll probably get turned into a movie.
Yeah, 100%. Or some like other experience. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think like I honestly don't, and maybe it's just 'cause, like I'm a nerd and like in geekdom or like fandoms, but like I don't understand the antagonism against. I think I misspoke earlier when I said Hasbro and the 3 dozen films is Mattel.
Hmm.
But like I just don't understand the vitriol. Like I don't get it. Like first of all, who cares? If you're angry, you're probably not a target, and nothing is here for everyone. So like get out of here. Like number two, like what a beautiful thing. Like the Daniel Kaluuya A24 Barney
Hmm.
film sounds amazing.
Hmm.
Like the Hot Wheels movie from JJ Abrams sounds amazing. It's JJ Abrams. There's going to be lens flare everywhere on the ground. It's going to be awesome. And so
Yes, lens
I don't know,
flare.
man. I'm just like I think like look, like have I been a ninny sometimes and like am I like antagonistic in some forms and some of course, like we all are, but like I just don't get that as a default response when people are just trying to create shit. You know, like I just
Yes.
don't. It just does not compute. It's so easy to complain than create. So like, why like stop complaining? Like I don't know.
No, no,
I
no,
don't
no.
now. I don't even know what else to
I agree with it. One of the things is, when I was younger, I was always told, like, as you get older, you're going to get firmer with your beliefs, and you're going to like want change less, and you're going to, just
say. Yes.
things. And there's some truisms to that. Like, I really do believe that basically the music anybody hit listen to from the age of about 13 to 20 is basically their genre of music. And they'll try and add some things here and there, but generally your formative years. I also firmly believe that you can only put so much stuff in your head. So the fact that I love baseball players and that's irrelevant, but it's still in there, and I can't add new information because that's stuck in there. Damn. So like,
Yeah.
I'm like, and I still randomly go see like 25-year-old pop punk bands because that's what I listen to. That's what I played in bands
Amazing.
and that's what I did.
Yeah. Amazing. Hell
But
yes.
one of the
Yeah.
things that I think is interesting is I'm with you on this. I've become more accepting of ideas where I'm like, that's cringe or that's mid or that would be like, quote unquote poser stuff. Where I'm like, no, no, no. I am open to this. I am constantly curious, and I think the day that I stop in my field, the day that I stop being curious and interested in things is the day I need to retire. But so I look at all those things, and certainly there might be a thing here or there where I'll still have that moment where I'm like, I don't know about that one. Like, and then I'm like, but I would just want to go check it out because good or bad, that's an interesting experience, and good or bad, content can be made, and multiple different things can exist. Like I just saw that preview for M Night's new movie. I'm like, now that's original.
Yeah.
Also,
100%.
I'm just
My
curious.
daughter.
Like
Yeah.
that can't be the twist. You can't give away the twist in the trailer. There has to be a secondary twist.
I
He,
mean, Jeff, you're a smart man. You know how twists work, or you know how trailers work. Rather, I mean, it might be
yeah,
the whole movie.
dude. If they gave a because it's a real. I'm not. Now I'm like, do I want to spoil the trailer for people? I'm like, you can view the trailer
No,
anyway,
don't
but
do it. Don't do it. I
I
mean,
won't.
in happy news, Deadpool and Wolverine has nailed it. I have no idea what that movie's
Oh,
about, and everyone is going to see it. It's going to be amazing.
for people who haven't watched Deadpool 2, that end scenario where they all jump out of the plane is one of the best non-spoiled things for me. Like the fact that that didn't get spoiled,
100%,
wonderful. And I won't spoil it
a
for
hundred
people, but
percent.
that is the tough part,
Don't do
right?
it.
That's the tough part. I mean, but smart on them, right? You have Deadpool, you have Wolverine. You don't need to tell me a damn thing. That's all I need.
100%,
And then,
a
make
hundred percent.
make cocaine jokes for the last 15 seconds of the trailer because that's funny. But other than
Oh my
that,
god, it was so funny.
oh, so good. Bing, when I close these, I do something called keep it short. The are 3 questions. The questions are short. Your answers
Okay.
can be however long you would like. Are you prepared and ready?
Short, yes, short.
Bing, question 1. Trailer that moved you the most ever.
Easy. Cloud Atlas, the long one,
Ooh.
the one that
Ooh.
was like 20 minutes long. It was 7 minutes long, but yeah, Cloud Atlas, easily, easily.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is make more ridiculously long trailers. Hell, make one in longer than the movie.
Honestly, it was also a long movie. No, the reason I liked it, well, as succinctly as
Yeah.
possible, is my favorite creative trope is suspension, and
Mm-hmm.
compaction. Sorry, I should say compaction is actually a more accurate way to define it. So what that means is that like everything is everything all at once, and also nothing. That's why Everything Everywhere is also my
Mm.
favorite film of all time. And
Yeah.
like Cloud Atlas, if you've read the book, you know it just time jumps through the same soul of different people, or of the same person in different eras,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just something so stunning about that idea of how we are living multiple lives now and also none. So anyways, that's why I gravitate to that. Inception is another one of my favorite movies
Yes.
because of that exact same reason. But yeah, Cloud Atlas, easy.
Without spoiling anything, I will just say that I didn't think you could find a ton of nihilism in an everything bagel, and I was shocked and delighted.
They're honestly, Daniels and John Wong are fucking geniuses, and also just the nicest guys. They're the best. They're ones that we want to win always. They're the fucking best.
It
Their
is.
next film is, by the way, going to be so prescient and essential because of course it should be. It's them. But yeah,
I
shout
love
out,
it.
love them dearly.
I love it. Um, Question two: piece of content can be anything. Piece of content where you were most surprised you liked it.
Button poetry. I didn't know what spoken word was until I went to college, and then I saw it, and I was like, "Whoa, this
Yeah.
is obnoxious at face value and sort of like eye rolly," because you're just like,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it's a bunch of privileged kids. I went to UPenn, so it's a bunch of privileged kids in
Yep.
Ivy League school who are like lamenting about their struggles, and not everyone is, by the way, but the one,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
the one that began was a Scion trust fund baby and
Mm-hmm,
complaining about
mm-hmm.
woe is his life, and I was just like, "Shut the fuck up! You
We
have
can
no idea
picture
what the
that
struggle
scene.
is." But
Yep.
100%, 100%. But everyone has their war, and he had a version of it. So like that, what my visceral reaction was like, "This is stupid." But then I got more immersed in it. Then I started reading my favorite creative format. There's no question. The fact that you
Hmm.
can show generations of experience within a few stanzas is remarkable. Is
Yeah.
is is a true feat.
It's on brand for us. Brevity we like. It's in the name.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, that would. Was there snapping?
Oh yeah. Always. There's
Okay.
always snapping. You
Okay.
have to
Okay.
because it's the
Okay.
polite clap. Snap is
Yeah.
a polite clap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of those things. By the way, just a quick aside, snapping is more popular than ever. It throws people off in a meeting. Um, but
Mm.
yeah, because generationally, if you're not used to snapping, I'm fine with it, by the way. But generationally, if you're in a boardroom and there's snapping going on, people get confused real quick.
I mean, I also like part of me thinks like, oh, like all life is a stage and everyone thinks they're a fucking actor. And so
Oh, of course.
like everyone who's speaking in a meeting is actually on their own little podium. And I kind of hate that. So I don't know. I
Hmm.
don't know.
Hmm. Oh yeah, well that's social media culture and everything else, right? We all
100%.
have a brand, right?
Everyone's
Um,
performing. It's fun. Yeah.
Everything is a performance. Boy, I mean, don't ask a PR person to tell you otherwise. Question three: thing you're most excited for this year?
Oh God.
I know I like to really leave the hard ones at the end. By the way, I think the hardest ones are the ones that are super vague.
I mean, okay, I'll give you two answers. I'll give you the specific and then I'll give you maybe the actual broader. So I've been working on a creative franchise for 9 years now. Um, It's anchored in 9 novels. It's the best thing I've ever done. It's about death. I will finally finish this year.
Oof, all
Uh,
right.
I'm the most excited about that. Just because like it's like honestly, I don't care if no one reads it. I know they will because I'll make them. But like, I just like it's for me, and I
Yeah.
think that's the highest form of creativity. And it's constructed like no other franchise I've ever experienced as a consumer. It's essential because we approach death in a way that is very real. The universe is going to feel like the real world. It's going to feel like an autobiographical thing that is scary. It's almost like what Civil War is making people feel right now in
Yep.
theaters.
Yep.
And so, but at an even harsher degree, I'll say. So that's at a specific level what I'm most excited about selfishly. And then broadly, like I really love what you said earlier, Jeff, or really resonated with. Like you kind of approach the world as Einstein would say, as if everything is a miracle. And that's just how I do things too. Like I just love
Yep.
everything. So like I'm in Vegas right now because we're here for a thing, and I'm staying next to the Bellagio fountains, and I like used a British accent downstairs with the receptionist and coursed my way into a fountain view that I did not pay for, and just seeing these
Yes.
lights dance to like Luck Be a Lady every night brings me insurmountable joy. Like I just like it's just so, what a beautiful thing. Who thought that like light should dance with water, should dance with music, and that like what type of artist exists to like synchronize music, lights, and like in a fountain? Like what? Who does this? I think it's just so beautiful. And so I don't know. I just feel like every day I'm very lucky where, and this is because of my mother and how she raised me. I have like multiple of these moments. Like every second there's a new glorious thing. So what am I most excited about? Probably the next second. There's probably something that's going to be really miraculous that I get really giddy about.
No, that's for me. Like I very much early days of 2010, 2011, 2012 was really building a lot of things with experiential marketing and Twitter and Facebook and everything. So
Mm,
I was just locked in. And then
mm,
one day I just woke up and I was like, I should probably like actually enjoy what's out there in front of me. So I decided to go
yeah.
to like 60 plus cities, write about them,
Ooh,
randomly experience them, find out that there's two zombie themed
ooh,
restaurants in the same area in Des Moines, right? Just go to
competition.
yeah, right. Well, yeah, competition breeds other things, right? So like I
Yep.
got to see the entire part of the country everywhere.
Mm,
The
mm,
entire continental United States, and it gave me a ton of perspective, and it would force me to actually go with that. So this wasn't natural for me. It actually forced me to have the exercise of like, I'm probably only going to be in this place once or twice, max, maybe, who knows? But
mm,
I should
mhm,
absolutely live in that moment, pick out something, whether it's going for a walk. I would actually put my parents on FaceTime because they can't travel, and I would just be like, well, here is a sunrise walk, through the hills of San Francisco, at 5:30 in the morning, right? Just to kind of give them that experience.
mm,
But yeah, so
mm.
sometimes you can be,
I love
it can resonate. You can be born with or kind of develop that ability to kind of see and enjoy things. And sometimes it's just something that you have to work on. And for me, it was
yeah.
I have to pick my head up from a screen and actually go out and experience things. And once in a while, I'll leave my phone on a charger.
I love that. That's so that the fact the fact that I just felt so calm hearing that is really sad on my end. But that's so beautiful, Jeff. I just like, oh God, the way my blood pressure just dropped 10 points. Oh my God. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Well,
Good for you.
and
I
and
love that.
and to just give people another perspective on that is that I got to that place after being in a place where I constantly had my phone on me, and I was like, everything is content. And then
Yeah.
I was like, I am super annoying to be around. I don't want to be this guy anymore. So thankfully,
I love
if I
that.
can recover,
That's
you
so
can
funny.
too. Bing, thank you so
That's
much for
so funny.
joining. This was awesome,
Thanks for having me,
important.
Jeff.
Really appreciate
No, thank you in the Shorty Awards. We love y'all. And thank you, Junmian.
it. Bye.
Bye.